Mark, right?
It is. It is.
Okay, great. Yeah, so I guess I'm just kind of interested in kind of, I've kind of, I think that the kind of the focus of my story will be I kind of followed around there's a group in Boston that meets pretty regularly and, monthly, if not more. And, it's just kind of big into this movement. And I'm just kind of curious, it sounds like, that both, obviously I know that you're
pretty heavy into it.
Yeah, exactly. So I figured I would just ask, what is it about this particular topic that seems to
draw people in like some sort of religious
exactly.
cult? Yeah. Yeah. I mean, and I'm not going to shy away from that because it's been compared to that in some circles, and it really does have some of the earmarks because one, it's based on faith. It's not like we've got this picture of a flat Earth that we're just passing around to people. But
yeah,
the big two reasons, and I've been asked this question before, in fact, just recently.
Yeah.
The big two reasons why it's resonating so well with people is one, because it's easy to understand. That's probably the first reason. And when it comes to anything, it's really easy. It doesn't sound like it when you first hear it because you're so conditioned against it that, again, like everybody, I hated it for the first time I heard the term ever in my life. But if I had to break it down like in less than 20 seconds, I'd say all the world's a stage and you're on it. Yeah. That's really it. And once you can get your head around that, then it's just comes down to the details, which is, all right, if we are on a stage, a big Hollywood backlot, then how was it built? How was this part taken care of? And then, of course, you have to look at the other side. It's like, well, yeah, but we've got a whole bunch of people telling us it's not. It's the exact opposite. We're this little rock flying through space. I'm going, yeah, but those guys have, like anything, like any corporation, like any institution, they have a vested interest to protect that institution. The comparison I try to give people is, and by the way, it auto records everything that I talk on my phone. So if you want a copy of this, I can send it to you in case you're like trying to jot down notes or anything like that.
Oh, awesome. Okay, yeah. I'm typing up notes too, but yeah.
No, people ask me that all the time. It's like, look, if I hear people even thinking about jotting down notes, like, look, I'm recording the whole thing anyway, so I'll just send it to you. But the easiest analogy I give to people is like, look, what if the Catholic Church found out tomorrow that the Virgin Mary's name was Susan? Would they tell people? No, of course they wouldn't. The narrative's too far along. The foundation's too well laid. They'd have to rewrite so much. It's like, well, what they don't know won't hurt them. So it's going to be the Virgin Mary. Let's just go with that. And that's a small, that's just a name. And they're not going to tell you. It's just, one of those things where they just kind of push. It's like, well, we know. But the narrative doesn't really change. It's just a name. Think about that when it comes to science. And that is because the question comes like, look, it's not like, here, let me throw a different angle at you, which is when I ask the average person or anybody in our community or anyone that starts out in our community, ask the average person, it's like, how do you know you're on a globe right now? Eventually, you're going to lean on one of the space programs. If you're in the United States, you're going to lean on NASA and Russia, their space program, the European, and so on and so on. Yeah. I go, okay, that's good, which is what I expect you to do. How did we know before NASA? Because it's not like we woke up in 1972 when the first full disc picture of Earth was taken and said, oh, wow, a good thing, because we were worried. We didn't know we were on a globe. We were taught for at least 20 to 25 generations before that. So how did you know before NASA? And then everybody's gears start spinning. It's like, well, ships on the horizon or curved shadows in the moon. I'm going, okay, science. So science told you, and you just took their word for it. And it's like, well, science wouldn't lie. So why would science lie to us? And it's like, well, okay, here's the problem there. If, let's say that science has been pushing that thing, the globe for 20, 25 generations, we'll just go back, and I know people will talk about the Greeks and the Sumerians, whoever else, but really, there's a reason why they call it the Copernican model, and that is, Copernicus, 500 years ago. We'll go back that far because most people, that's where they use their grounding point. Okay. If eventually, sooner or later, you have to take a picture of the Earth. Sooner or later. Let's say you get up there and it isn't what you thought it was. Would you tell the population? And from everything that we've seen, and I look, I'm one of the few conspiracy guys guys that'll actually kind of go along with the greater good, which is
okay.
It's like, well, because some people say, no, I'd absolutely tell the population. It's like, would you? Because that's one of the questions you'd probably ask. It's like, why hide it? Why keep it hidden?
Yeah.
And I get that probably 1 out of every 10 questions, and there's several reasons for it, but they're real easy once you think about it a little bit. And that is, the first one is academic, which is, you think of every major university in the world that has an astrophysics or an astronomy department. Those departments shut down overnight. They shutter their doors. They do not open. And then the remaining physical sciences like geology, hydrology, biology, archaeology, whatever it is, it doesn't really matter what the discipline is. Any ground-based science has to retool from the bottom up because of this new model. Obviously, I mean, everyone's just going to be spinning. I mean, books are going to have to be rewritten almost immediately.
Yeah.
That's just the academic part. Economics would be in chaos. You'd have to close down all world markets for at least a month to figure out what the new industries, what does this mean to every industry in the world? Most notably,
you say you'd have to close down what? I'm sorry.
All the world stock markets immediately.
Okay.
I mean, good Lord. I mean, if the president was shot tomorrow, they would probably have to close markets like 2 or 3 days just because everything freaks out the stock market. Can you imagine if all of a sudden, oh yeah, by the way, the world isn't what you think it is? It would be chaos in the world markets. Most notably, like the defense industries, and which kind of ties to the third part, which is spirituality, which we'll get into in a second. Which is, let's say your entire industry, like pick Boeing for example. They don't just make airplanes; they make weapons, and so does General Dynamics and Lockheed Martin. The United States makes a lot of weapons and sells it to other countries. Would you still be going to war if this place was a snow globe? Because at that point, you have to think it's like, okay, if it's a globe model, you can lean towards the science side and say, oh well, it's organic, it's an accident, it just happenstance that we're here. But if it's a snow globe, it's tough to be an atheist. So if you're going down that road, it's like, okay, do you still go to war? Not only that though, do you still commit hate crimes? Do you still commit sex crimes? Because it's like, okay, there may be somebody looking over your shoulder. I'm not going to say, I'm not going to name God and say, well, it's the divine, it's some guy that looks like Santa Claus in a bathrobe. But it's that, and that really ties into the third part, which is the spirituality side, which is, you can remember, 8 out of every 10 people in the world belong to one of the major religions. And you're basically, and all of them have been looking for the Holy Grail, the Ark of the Covenant, that sort of thing. They've been looking for proof, handprint of God type stuff. Yeah. And what if all of a sudden and I'm not necessarily saying you're giving it to them, but you're giving them a huge push in that direction, giving them a lot more, you're empowering them a lot more. What happens to those groups? Because remember, science has been beaten over the head for 500 years and doing a pretty good job of it. I mean, we're so high tech now that religion's really taken a back seat. Does religion have the restraint to not exact vengeance against science? To where you can imagine that people, literally soapboxes in the middle of universities saying, burn down the libraries, that sort of thing. So you couple all those three things I just mentioned, and the scary people that run the world, the long table and the cigarettes, bad lighting. Though that meeting lasts about 10 minutes, which is like, okay, do we tell them if there's even a chance that people there'll be chaos in the streets with pitchforks and torches? They're not going to do it. So they just decide.
There's even a chance, you said?
Yeah, there's not even a chance. If there's even a chance of that happening, you just don't take it. Authority, the highest authorities do not take chances. They always hedge their bets and cover their bases. And that's what they did in the 1950s. They figured it out. And up until the 1950s, they didn't know for sure because they just didn't have the tech to figure it out. But once they did, it was like, oh, okay. Anyway, sorry, that's my little ramble.
No, that's good. That's good. So I was going to ask a little bit about the trend too. So when did this kind of from talking to people here in Boston, it seems like about 2 years ago is when a lot of it started happening. Yeah. Okay.
The trend.
Yeah. So just run me through kind of like the timeline of.
Oh yeah. The timeline, and I won't be shy about saying how I helped with it. Which is the timeline was about 2 years ago. I put out a series of videos that really kind of turned into the Dummies Guide to Flat Earth. Earth.
Okay.
Up until then, flat Earth has always been around. I mean, literally, it's been around for a long time. I didn't invent flat Earth, but it until recently it was kind of coming in like a fuzzy radio station, and all I really did was because I hated it. I thought it was terrible, and so I looked into it and tried to break it down for like 9 months from like the summer of 2014, and to the point where I was like, okay, you know what? I can't prove the globe anymore. For whatever reason, I cannot objectively, if I was going to treat it like a court case, I can't do it.
Yeah.
So I put out a series of videos.
Can't prove the globe anymore, you said?
No, I couldn't prove the globe anymore. I couldn't do it.
Yeah.
And literally, if you treat it like a court case, nobody can. They cannot. Yeah. You cannot do it. So I put out a series of videos. I was really, really frustrated, and I put out a series of videos called Flat Earth Clues at the beginning of 2015. And I
called what was it, sorry?
Oh, Flat Earth Clues.
Okay.
And you'll see that. I sent it to you on the link in my email. But
perfect. Okay, gotcha.
But if you type it in anywhere, you'll find it. But and I said, okay, prove me wrong. Tell me how you think. I don't think it's a globe anymore. I think it's flat. I think it's always been flat, and I think that it was introduced artificially 500 years ago to keep us from freaking out because human beings don't like confinement. So tell me how I'm wrong. And I honestly thought for at least the first month that thing was out there that I was going to get some professor, a guy with a master's or a PhD in astrophysics, and was going to call me up and say, okay, here's where you're wrong. Show me a little math formula. You forgot to carry the 2. You're an idiot. You can shut down your YouTube channel now. And instead the opposite happened, where people, it really, not only was it resonating with a lot of people, I started getting interviews immediately, and where people they were like, tell me more, tell me how this thing's breaking down. And then I started getting subject matter experts that were calling me, people out of different fields and disciplines, all branches of the military and engineers and anybody that had to do with transportation and anyone had to do with flying. Everybody was telling me the same thing. Surveyors were great too, and they were all saying the same thing. It's like, you know what, we couldn't see the forest for the trees. We all have heard of the curvature of the Earth, and we've all heard of the Coriolis effect, but nobody uses it in real life. Nobody uses it in their 9-to-5 jobs. And so we just assumed, like the pilots told me the same thing. It's like, oh yeah, we always see a flat horizon when we're flying, but we get from point A to point B, nobody dies, so we don't really think about it. And it's so ludicrous that who are you going to tell anyway? Really, once you figure it out for yourself, it's this struggle of it's like, okay, who do you tell? Which is why I came up with the whole Fight Club analogy, which is the first rule of Flat Club is that you do not talk about Flat Club, because people
how come?
Because you will get ostracized for it. And that's why, and because people get the problem with the community or just the whole concept is once you figure it out, it's a flaw in the community thinking, which is once you figure it out, you forget all the time and frustration it took you, be it days or weeks to get there. It's like okay, I hate it. Hey, flat Earth, I kind of dig it. But once you do that, it's like, oh yeah, I think I'm going to tell my best friend or my family over dinner. I'm going to try to convince them in 2 hours. It's like, dude, it took you an entire week to get there. How do you think you're going to convince them in 2 hours? And when you bring it up to people, because the conditioning is so deep. I mean, we've been told literally since we're 6 years old. You put the globe in the classroom that if you just through high school, that's 12 years of seeing that image. Not to mention all the the movie references and space shows and all this. That people really, I mean, I'm not kidding you. Even the most hardened conspiracy people brace against it because the conditioning is so thorough. Until recently,
again, you said I'm not kidding you. Even the most
hardened conspiracy. I mean, I literally know conspiracy guys that think that all the members of the royal family are reptiles, and they'll say, and I will say, you know what, I got a thing about flat Earth, and it'll get the hell out of here.
You literally know conspiracy theorists who believe that the entire royal family.
Oh, sure. I mean, there's conspiracy guys in all the different disciplines. I mean, guys that believe in Bigfoot, guys believe in Loch Ness Monster, not to mention all the other fun stuff. So even the ones who believe in the it is.
They hear flat Earth and they balk.
Oh yeah. Me. I mean, look, one of the reasons I got into flat Earth was sheer conspiracy boredom, where I had heard it all, and I had opinion on pretty much every conspiracy you could ever think of, but yet there's this one book on the shelf which nobody reads. It's the DVD you got for Christmas that you're never going to watch because it's horrible. It's got a horrible title and it's nothing you're interested in. But when you look at it, when you finally look at it, you're going, okay, what exactly is going on here? It's kind of like here's another analogy I can give you. It's kind of like a child's puzzle box. You're looking at a guy on a park bench and he's playing with what appears to be like a children's toy, but he can't figure it out, right? And he's getting you can see him getting frustrated. He's turning it over and over and he can't make heads or tails of it. And you're looking at him going, this guy's an idiot. It's like, I can see how I can solve it right from here, right? So he gets so frustrated and he leaves the park bench and the toy's still there, and he's like, I'm going to crack this thing in an hour, a day at most. And you sit down, and the more you play with it, the worse it gets, the more complicated it gets, because you start running into these loose strings, these loose threads, and where you can't get a resolution. And it's like, okay, why can't I solve this part of it? Why can't I solve it? When you're talking about the globe, you try to lean on certain things. It's like, well, we know it's a globe because insert your answer here, and you can't do it. You just keep falling, you keep going, and then as you're going down that path, you realize there's like 2 or 3 more paths to where some people it takes a very short amount of time. Anyway, so sorry, the timeline. So in 2015, I put out those clues, and then it was building slowly but surely, and then in the beginning of 2016, that Grammy-nominated rapper B.O.B. he made a song. He made a song about it called Flatline, which was interesting, and then for whatever reason, Neil deGrasse Tyson, the world's most popular scientist, came out against him and did a head-to-head. Well, they didn't meet face-to-face, but he went on Comedy Central and tried to disprove the flat Earth, and that generated a lot. That sounds like a bad joke.
So that was one key moment.
That was a key moment. That was the beginning.
It brought it into at least.
Oh yeah. That because everybody talked about it because it was an interesting.
And you're talking about, and you said B.O.B. and Neil deGrasse Tyson. They went on TV and kind of debated.
Well, it was worse than that. Neil deGrasse Tyson, what he did was, and you can look this up. I mean, type any of this stuff, and it's a great story.
Yeah. Oh no, he just went on. He went on TV, right, and talked about it.
Well, Neil deGrasse Tyson did. B.O.B. made a song about it, and he used like a 60-second university clip of Neil deGrasse Tyson talking about the Earth, and in the song. And then Neil deGrasse Tyson, for whatever reason, again tried to address it, and not only did they got in this Twitter battle, and then Neil deGrasse Tyson comes on Comedy Central and I think one other show, and goes into this little tirade, but it wasn't very well done. I mean, there was no graphics, no animations. He just started talking math. I was going, dude, you're not near bringing your A game. But it generated a lot of publicity about it, and that carried through pretty much most of 2016. And then I think it was the end of last year or the beginning of this year where Kyrie Irving did his thing.
Right,
which was mind-blowing because, he does this before Media Day at the All-Star game. And, his right-hand man, now they're going to be broken up here as soon as the season starts. But they...
LeBron was talking about it.
Oh, yeah, LeBron. I mean, that's a clip I use pretty regularly now, an All-Star game where LeBron is actually asking Kyrie at the All-Star game, it's like, is the Earth flat? And Kyrie's going, yeah. And it's going, oh my God, you couldn't ask for a more high-profile thing. So that...
You couldn't ask for a more high-profile thing?
Oh, really? LeBron James. I mean, think of, you have companies that are falling over each other trying to get him to endorse stuff, and he goes ahead and mentions flat Earth, not in a disparaging manner, for free for us. It's like, really? He's most recognizable athletes literally in the world, and he did this. And, and by then, of course, and then Shaquille O'Neal came out a few days later.
Exactly.
And I know he backed off of that, but of course he was going to. I mean, the man makes $20 million in endorsements, and he hasn't played a game in how many years?
Right.
And so go ahead.
Oh yeah, go ahead. Sorry.
Oh well, then he comes out. He backbackpedaled on Jimmy Kimmel. Anyway, so go ahead.
Yeah. One thing I was going to ask before I forgot, because you mentioned this is the backlash and the how
the family people will come
exactly.
against you.
But even just talking to some of the people here that meet up once a month, it sounds like this is a thing that while it doesn't seem, to the outside observer might not seem like that serious of a thing, it sounds like, from people who believe it, it sounds like it's ended relationships.
Potentially, yeah. It's really strange.
Have you heard of instances of things that they kind of illustrate, like how serious,
oh yeah,
kind of like people take it?
Oh yeah, you bet. I can't begin to tell you how many there are. People, mostly because of what I mentioned earlier, where people, like last holidays was probably the worst, because people went to the holidays and you would sit around, Thanksgiving dinner, and they would bring it up. And you can't, you pick any other topic, you might as well say you're coming out, as a homosexual heroin addict, at Thanksgiving, because that's the sort of reaction you get. It's like, what? Because people think you've got some sort of mental problem that's happening there. People really will lash out against you. But again, it's a knee-jerk reaction. I quote it here, but yes, relationships have ended, divorces have look, I won't even date, but there's people, there's flat earth dating sites happening right now, because
is that
people
true?
Oh yeah, absolutely. Look up something called I don't want to screw all the names up, but here's one I know because it's so catchy: Flat Earth Love, FE Love, I think .com.
FE Love, okay.
FE Love, because it's such a huge paradigm shift that if your significant other isn't on board and doesn't eventually get on board, it's doomed. There's nothing,
But if your significant other isn't on board and doesn't get on board,
and doesn't get on board, eventually, some people take their time. Some are kind of neutral about it, but I've never really heard a good story about a relationship where one is really, really pro and one is against. It's extremely polarizing in that regards, where nobody's on the fence about it. You being in the media, you're kind of on the fence because you have to be, for what you're doing. But most people, you are either really for it or really against it, which is why the producers have been coming out in droves, circling us, because they know that what's the producer's line? It's like, doesn't matter if you love it or hate it, as long as you're talking about it. And that's really where we are right now, where the meetups in fact, I'm going to a meetup just this afternoon, where up here in Seattle, it's the second one in Seattle this year, and I'm not even organizing it. There's meetups. Let me kind of break down some quick numbers. The meetups that are happening, that just started happening this year. I did one last year, and Patricia, one of the big Flat Earth women, she did one in Houston last year. But this year, just about every city you can think of has done them. And the numbers, I would say at least 90% of our membership is still, again, don't want to use the gay reference too much, is in the closet about it, because they don't know who to tell. They and if you want to know, like if you go into YouTube and you typed in Flat Earth, this will give you an idea of growth. Typed in Flat Earth at the beginning of 2015, you may have gotten like 50,000 search results. If you type it in this morning, and you got to sort by upload date, because YouTube keeps messing with their algorithms on different filters, but upload date seems to always show the best. You sort by upload date, as of this morning, it's at 18.9 million, which is huge. And then you're saying, well, okay, what does that mean? It's like, okay, well, if you type in NASA, it comes in about 8 million. If you type in Lady Gaga, she comes in at just about 16 and a half, maybe 17. The president, Donald Trump, comes in at about 20. So we're tracking better. It's one of those weird secrets out there that's in the conspiracy. We're tracking better than most mainstream topics. I kind of equate it to the Spice Girls album, and I don't know how old you are, but you remember their big album back in the day, Tell Me What You Want.
Yeah, barely, but I do.
Well, it won Grammys, right? I'm stealing from Chris Rock here. It won Grammys, and millions of people bought this album, but nobody admitted to it. Meaning, it was an album you played at home by yourself. You never played it in front of your friends because it was super catchy, but it was super cheesy. That's sort of like what's with the flat Earth thing, where it's this guilty little pleasure out there where people love digging into it, but they don't want to talk. It's like they're not going to bring it up at the water cooler generally.
Yeah.
So the numbers just keep growing and growing and growing, but it's still, I have this weird vision of when this thing finally breaks or finally hits a certain level, that you'll be talking to your friend and it's like, oh yeah, you hear about this flat Earth thing? It's like, dude, I totally heard about that like a year ago. And
yeah.
But that's where kind of the meetups are going. The meetups are kind of, and I don't know, have you gone to one, or are you just tracking some guys?
Yeah. I've gone to.
Oh, okay. Well, I mean, you know what it kind of feels like. The first time it ever happens, like when I don't know if you do repeated ones in the same area, but the first time it happens, it kind of feels like a more positive version of an AA meeting, to be honest. Because it's like, my name's Mark. Hey, Mark, and I'm a flat earther. It's like it's like I got into flat Earth because of fill in the blank here, and that's what it kind of feels like in a way, because people tell their stories about, oh yeah, my girlfriend, she hates me, and my mom won't talk to me anymore, and that's where it leads. But but people don't give it up. That's the other thing. It's like once you go down that road, it's not like you can turn it off. I mean, the enthusiasm can be ramped down and you can go try to go back to your normal life, but nobody, I mean, there's a few people that claim it, but very, very few people go back to any sort of globe model. They may not make videos anymore, and they may, stop telling their friends, but they've kind of been inoculated against the globe. And so they just, they do their thing and they kind of nod to each other, but it does turn into that Fight Club scenario. The only difference is that you don't know, because we don't have badges or patches or weird stickers on our cars. You don't know. You probably walking by flat earthers in the street, you have no idea who they are because they look exactly like everybody else. So. Right.
And it sounds like in many cases aren't going to talk.
No. Well, not unless somebody brings up, because they look around. It's like, oh, is it okay to talk about this? And,
right.
Whereas, the people that are more high profile in the community, I mean, that's what we do. We don't care, But at the same time, it's, I'm not. Some people are like into street activism, pulling people off the street. I'm more of a, do interviews, make videos, try to do a soft touch, because there's pushback where you bring it up to some. Let me use a George Orwell quote for you real quick, which is actually I put it on in the description of every video I make, because he wrote this in 1946, where in some British publication where he was talking about the responsibility of science. Now, he's not a flat earther, or he wasn't a flat earther, but he mentioned something. He goes, it's interesting. He goes, you can go to anybody on the street and ask them how they know they're on a globe right now, and their first response is always the same. It's like, well, what are you talking about? We know. It's one of those things. We just know we're on a globe. And when you try to push them on it, it's like, well, how do you know? They get irritated and sometimes angry. And I thought that was very, very interesting, because remember, 1946, that was still 12 years away from when NASA was even founded in 1958. Okay. So how did everybody know in 1946? And it's like, because they were told. That was it. And because science isn't like anybody else. Science, it's like if a spy came up to you, you're not going to believe them. But science, they're science. Science would never lie. I'm going, no. Again, they're an institution like anything else. They do not. People protect their own, plain and simple. The petrol. If somebody came up with an alternative fuel source and could replace gasoline, full well the petroleum industry would be all over that and either buy them out or threaten them or shut them down or do whatever they can. Perfect example would be cubic zirconias, right? Cubic zirconias were the diamond industry finally gave up and bought them out entirely. The diamond industry now owns all cubic zirconias because there was no way they could beat them in an open fair fight. So they said, you know what, we're just going to buy everybody out, and now we own that too. So science, it's not true. Do not think that science. Yeah, of course, they're academics and they're supposed to be full of integrity. But I could give you plenty of examples of how science is like one of the most arrogant things. And I don't want to bash. I don't want to make it sound too negative, but it's for you. Yeah. One of the most arrogant things I've ever heard in my life was Neil deGrasse Tyson saying that science is right whether you believe in it or not. And I'm going, okay, when you're that's a pretty general blanket statement. Like, all right, when you're talking about the boiling temperature of water at sea level, okay, I'll go along with that. But when science makes big mistakes, they do not fess up and apologize. I mean, good Lord. I mean, when science right when they made lead paint or lead gasoline, saline or DDT or I don't know, asbestos, or how about one of the famous examples is, I don't know, the scientists that took all the money and told everybody that cigarettes were perfectly fine. So don't tell me that science is incorruptible. Uncorruptible?
Right.
Don't tell me that they cannot be bought off. They're just men like anyone else. They what was the funny line? Scientists need Porsches too, and they're going to absolutely take the bribes when it comes to that. But because they're not military, because we don't treat them like mad scientists necessarily, or evil supervillains, they get a pass. And with something like this, which is why, and if you watch the clues, and I highly recommend you do, because it's not that long, but one of the clues I actually touched on, for example, here's a perfect example: the core of the Earth, boiling temperature of water. Hey, fine. Tell me about the core of the Earth. If you believe mainstream science, if you drilled down from your office right now 4,000 miles, you would hit the center of the Earth. It's like, oh, okay. And we've all seen the cross sections of the Earth. You got that red band and orange and yellow. And white.
Sure.
And we've all seen
talking about the layers.
Oh yeah, the layers. Yeah, we've all seen this since we're kids, right? It's like, oh, good. So you know the layers. So what's the deepest hole you've ever drilled? Half that, 2,000 miles, 1,000 miles, because you got to remember, like 1% of that distance is 40 miles. That's 1%. So you've drilled 40 miles, right? How about 10?
Yeah.
No, the deepest hole ever drilled is 8 miles. So what exactly? And in small print, if you go to Wikipedia, they say, well, yeah, we're extrapolating, we're expanding, we're speculating. It's like, so you don't know. You literally don't know what's happening between here and the core. Again, if you believe even at the globe at all. And it's like, okay, even if I did go by what you're saying about ground penetrating radar and all this other crap you're coming up with, one, I don't buy that because you've been showing us that cross section forever. And the other thing is, how are you showing us the cross section of Jupiter and Saturn and Neptune and all these other things when you don't even claim to have devices on some of those places? So how are you coming up with this? And the big reason is that science, even though they won't say it officially, they make leaps of faith too. And that is instead. So I go, my argument, I put this to some scientists and I go, so why instead of the cross section where you show us all those bands and layers, why don't you just put a big question mark in the center of that? That's because science won't do that. They won't do it. They don't leave open-ended questions. They'll say, our guess is this, and they'll do that for a number of years, and then they'll leave out the our guess. And then it's gospel. You ask any kid now that graduates from high school, it's like, oh yeah, what's this? Oh, that's the core of the Earth. That's the layers of the Earth. Here are the bands, here are the names. Like, it doesn't strike you as odd that every one of those bands is about 1,000 miles thick exactly, and there's no weird formations. It just looks like you took a gobstopper and cut it in half. That doesn't bother anybody. So I mean, that's just one example of what science. Again, the responsibility of science. We take their view as pure fact.
Yeah. So one of the things I was going to ask too is from talking to one of the guys that I'm kind of focusing on here in Boston, is that he feels almost like he wishes he wouldn't have stumbled into this, because now he feels this kind of duty to kind of show others and prove that this is find definitive proof that this is the kind of the case. And so that's why he's out on Sunday mornings taking these kind of like long range photos and stuff like this, and out in the rain. And it's almost like he and I'm guessing others kind of almost, some people it seems like kind of take this as almost like a burden.
The red pill blue pill argument, straight out of the Matrix, which is the line that Cypher said. It's like, why didn't I take the blue pill? It is kind of a double-edged sword in that regard, which is once there's this weird adjustment period. I mean, first off, it's like going through a train tunnel, just trying to get through it. Where there's so many doubts, but when you get on the other side, you're in foreign territory. You're in uncharted territory where you don't know what to do. It's like, okay, but you do feel some sort of obligation to tell people, because it's not just a truth. It's it's like where not some little conspiracy. This is a whole nother level where because it's the only conspiracy you can't walk away from. So people, you do feel.
Say that again. You say it's the only conspiracy you can't walk away from.
Yeah. It's literally the only conspiracy you can't. Every other conspiracy you can bury in the desert somewhere, and and nobody's going to see it. I'm not going to rattle off all the conspiracies, but all of them can be hidden, because if you don't want to think about them, you don't have to think about them. I mean, we'll just use JFK as an example, even though it's kind of dated. JFK, if you don't want to think about JFK, it's not going to affect your life. However, if somebody comes to you and says, "Oh yeah, by the way, Neo, the world isn't what you think it is," you can either ignore it, you can go into denial and hold on to that denial for as long as you want, or you're going to try to resolve it. And people have, they have it. I had a guy on a show once, a radio call-in show, where they opened up the phone lines, and he came at me and, literally, how dare you, young man, tell me the world isn't what I think it is. It's like, look, I'm not saying that, if you want to hold, I'll be the first person to say this. You want to hold on the globe, or if your life, steal from Men in Black here, if your life, if you think you got a good beat on things and you don't want to mess with it, do not look into this. If you're happy with the life you have, and you get up in the morning and you just smile at the window and go, "This is going to be a great day," and you do that a lot, you probably don't want to look into this, because then you're going to have to start all over. Because because here's the real reason why it causes so many. I've been looking into this psychologically recently, which is it ripples back. It's kind of like finding out that somebody lied to you from your childhood, finding out you were adopted when you were like 35, something like that, because all of a sudden the ripples start going back in time, and you have to go back. You're actually following the ripples back to all the way with Flat Earth. You're going all the way to pretty much to the beginning, to where you're sitting in a classroom when you're 6 years old, looking at the globe, going, "Oh, look, it's a globe," and the teachers encourage you, "Oh, spin the globe." Everybody's done that, right? Oh, where is India? Everybody's done that, and all of a sudden, all those years. I mean, it's not like you're just resolving something from now or last year. You're resolving something that goes back, again, the adoption thing, or finding out the negative version of it. It's one thing if you find out your spouse has been cheating on you. It's another thing if they've been cheating on you for the better part of 20 years. Right? That's a whole nother level, because then it just gets magnified. It's like, because then you start going, it's like, wait a minute, what about when we took that trip to Bermuda?
Right.
Hey, wait a minute, what about when we did this? That's really what we're talking about here. It goes back so far that you have to reconcile a huge amount of memories that are tied to the globe, and then you have to, it's slowly but surely find your way out of that, where you have to go back and then move your way forward. And it's like, okay, is my life, because you literally kind of feel like the ground is coming out from underneath you, where some people have felt, called me or written me and said, "Oh yeah, you feel claustrophobic." In fact, some person it's like, because you're taking away the infinite universe, and you're saying, "No,
have you heard of some bad reactions, like when people kind of like first
nobody's let's put it this way, nobody's jumped off a bridge. That I have been feeling really lucky about that. Oh, absolutely. People.
What are some things that happen that you've heard from?
The first thing is absolute lack of sleep, because your mind is moving so quickly. You're trying to play catch up that there's no way you can sleep. Most of the people get into this lose, I think, like a week right off the bat, because they're because all they want to do, they have so many questions, they just start digging into more and more videos and more articles. They're just watching. They the whole what's the term, the recent binge watching, which you do with shows. So binge watching and losing sleep's the first thing. Second thing is anxiety. Third thing is tears, depending on how emotional you are. Where because some people feel they get that real epiphany, where it's like, because if depending on the type of person you are, glass half full or glass half empty, you can get that feeling of the big one that hits is you're not alone. And again, I'm not going to point towards the divine and creation, but that does really kind of play into it, which is, if you are in a snow globe, a building, then that building was built by someone, which means you're not this lonely little rock flying through space that could get squashed at any time by a black hole or a rogue sun. You're in you're in a way more intimate setting. So for some people, it's like, holy smokes, you just took me from a giant house to a one-room apartment in some ways. But the other side, it's like, well, but it also becomes an intimate one-room apartment. Somebody wrote me and said, are you killing astrology? And I go, no, astrology, not astronomy, but astrology. And I go, not at all. I go, the stars are still up there, and the planets are still up there, but they're just lights. They're just this giant elaborate clock system. Doesn't mean, astrology is based on that clock system. I go, clock system's still there. You can read it however you want. It's just that they're not millions and billions and trillions of light years away. Oh, sorry, not trillions of light years, millions of miles away. They're just really, really close. So it becomes much more intimate, and they were built specifically for this environment. And that really gives a lot of, you get for a bunch of people, they get it. And it's like, oh yeah, this is cool. This is now, then they can get they feel more grounded to this place, and they're not as worried about anything. Any sense of insignificance goes away. That sense of uniqueness that nobody felt, and being special. It's like, look, I don't want to get into much, the church versus state thing, but you're not an accident. It's really tough to be an atheist in this whole thing. You're not an accident. You're a unique, special, creative force that was put here for a reason. And the ultimate, how that reason is going to be revealed, and anyone's guess at this point. But you were definitely not just a random speck that was created out of nothing. The Big Bang question. It's like that literally you were not created from nothing. You were created, definitely deliberately created, and that gives once you can get past those early stages, but it's definitely a psychological journey for people, and but the side effects aren't as bad as you might think. Some people, it's been way more positive than negative, let's put it that way, where most people are they like the meetup I went to in Seattle just only a month ago. You literally could not, it was hard to hear in there because people they were just so amped up. They love being around other people, and once you get past that, I can't talk to my family and I can't talk to these people. Once you get into a room with other people, it really changes, and then it's a really, really cool thing.
That's a key part of the say emotional roller coaster of coming to believe that the world is flat is or that the Earth is flat is that finding like-minded people
absolutely
that you can
like anything.
People think I'm talking just from I know that obviously, like, just from an emotional standpoint, is that relieving, refreshing, I guess, for these people to even if it's just a meetup with like a dozen people, just to be able to talk to.
It's in fact, you don't even need a dozen people. When you first, I get email after email from people that say the first time they run into somebody, even if it's happenstance, it's like, oh right, again, it's that Fight Club thing. It's like, I'm not alone. I'll give you two real quick stories. When I was down, in fact, during the same trip, I wasn't not even 6 weeks ago, I was down in Atlanta at a religious flat Earth conference. There's two sides of this. There's secular, and then there's the religious side of it. I was down there because I was kind of curious to see how the religious side was going. It was a Christian debate, law, chapter, and verse. But I go during lunch. I go to a restaurant. It was like a sports bar right next door, and with like 4 or 5 guys, and we're just kind of talking. We're kind of loud because the flat earthers are not quiet when they're together. And the bartender, a girl, had to have been like 27, 28, from the other side of the restaurant, comes over and she goes, "Hey, you guys in the flat Earth?" I go, "Yeah, why?" She goes, "High five." And she was a closet flat earther, and she had been into it for a couple months, and I'm going, "Wow, that's cool." And then the next day, I'm flying out of Atlanta, and I get to where they're doing their bags, and you put your bag through the X-ray, and you either get it or it goes
through security.
Yeah, it's security, and it goes into sometimes it goes into secondary screening for whatever reason, and mine went into secondary screening, and I was wearing one of the memes is "I am Mark Sargent." It's a whole Fight Club thing, but I was wearing the "I am a Mark Sargent" shirt, and there was a kid. He couldn't have been more than 25, and he sees me coming up to my bag, right, and he he's looking at the shirt, he's looking at me, looking at the shirt, looking at me, and he goes, "You Mark Sargent for real?" And I go, "Yeah, why?" And he goes, he winks at me, and he goes, "That's my name too." And he gives me the bag without even checking it, and I was going, "Okay, what just happened here?" Which meant meant he was in. That's straight out of Fight Club, where the bartender with a black eye gives you a free drink, and I'm going, okay, this thing is way bigger than I'd even thought, because what it went along with what I was saying is there's a lot of closet flat earthers out there that just because they haven't met up with other people, they're scared. And I've had radio interview after radio interview after producer. They've said the reason this thing has not been turned into a television show or I mean, we've got documentary teams working on it right now, which is great. But the reason why it hasn't been turned into a television show is because the producers are scared to death of the potential backlash of what might happen.
That's what that's what a couple of the guys I was talking to mentioned that you had, that there was a documentary. Is it a film crew that's following? Right now?
There's multiple documentaries that are happening. Some Christian and some not Christian. But there's a team out of Los Angeles that's been following us around for months. In fact, they took me down to the blackout zone of the eclipse just recently.
That are following you around for months. You said?
Oh yeah, where they just come up. I mean, they've been with me several times. They go down and visit other people around the country, and the culmination of it is they're going to be going to the national conference in Raleigh, North Carolina, and then after that, who knows what they're going to do? Maybe sell it to Sundance.
And is the goal of that to make a film about it?
Oh yeah, it's They're going to try to turn it into a full-blown documentary film, which is great. I'm happy for them, but but at least they're taking the chance. Nobody wants to be the first person on the dance floor. Especially at a wedding. You don't want to do it, but that's what I run into. I mean, we've had producers been hunting around since the end of 2015. In fact, one in particular, she got fired because of it. She's going. Oh, wow, she did screen tests, the whole 9 yards, pitched them a rough sizzle reel, and they canned her right there on the spot. And it was like, oh crap. But she was ahead of the curve. She knew what the potentially could happen. But other producers are kind of in that line where it's like they know how polarizing it is, but who's going to be the one that puts it out there first and turns it into something? Because honestly, with all the reality television that's been out there over the last 5 years, why hasn't this thing been covered? How many shows can you do on guys with beards that are hunting crocodiles? How many? I don't know. And doing barbecue recipes on the side. There's too many target demographics now, and this is one of the only things that's never been touched. I mean, it's never been touched by anybody. We've had just massive upticks in the search engines, and even though it kind of reminds me of that William Shatner line where after Star Trek was canceled, it was syndicated all over the place, but he goes, I was one of the most popular men in Hollywood, and I wasn't working. Because I could not find work, even though he was all over television, any given night. But that's where we are, to where, I mean, even if you type in the search engine, if you type in "the Earth is," you'd see what shows up at the top of the search engine. In most cases, it'll be flat.
Yeah. So another thing I was going to ask is that there seems to be like different responses kind of to different conspiracy theories. So like Alex Jones, seems to that guy seems to incite a lot of anger and vitriol and that sort of thing, obviously. Yeah. But it seems like with Flat Earth, it's more kind of like the reaction is more kind of goes to not necessarily anger, but just like you're crazy. Just people will write you off as insane or crazy. Is that kind of how?
Yeah, it's different.
Is that kind of how you've I guess?
As a matter of fact, it's been put into the vernacular of mainstream media where it's now synonymous with the ultimate form of crazy. So there's crazy, right? There's really insane, and then there's flat earther. Flat earthers has now has been bumped up to the top of, and you can see it. You can type in flat Earth into Google, and you'll see all these stories where they're topping it. It's like, oh, this politician's so nuts, he might as well be part of this flat Earth group, or this guy is so nuts. He obviously believes in flat Earth. But by the way, it's interesting you brought up Alex Jones, because Alex Jones' team was one of the early groups that contacted me, and they wanted to do a show. They wanted to do a show on flat Earth, and their question was, and I thought it was very telling, was, can we do a show without actually saying the words flat Earth? And I go, you can dance around it for maybe, I don't know, 10 minutes, maybe, but sooner or later you're gonna have to say it. And I said, yeah, sorry, we're just, there's no way we can do this, because, and this is Alex Jones, right? He does all sorts of funky stuff, and they would not touch it because, well, I shouldn't say they wouldn't touch it. They were thinking about it, but they couldn't do it because they were afraid of the backlash. You would lose all these members, and maybe mainstream media would come at them. But people, when it comes to to flat Earth, it's different from normal conspiracies. Like, when they look at you and say, "Oh, you're a conspiracy nut," they look at you. Yeah, it's completely separate. But at the same time, it's also, you were asking. Let's circle back real quick. You're asking why it's been resonating the way it has. It's one of two. It's part of two reasons. One, of course, is because it's easy to understand. The second part is that it's the only conspiracy that really has more positive aspects to it than negative. Meaning, it's got this message, not to steal from the Obama campaign from years ago, but it's got this message of hope, which is, all the other conspiracy things, it's like, oh, it's dark, it's brooding, it's like the Heath Ledger Batman movie. It's shades of gray, man, and there's no good, there's no light in it. But there is, which is why, by the way, there's way more. The conspiracy world is generally heavy male dominated, but there's a lot more women in flat Earth than there are in other conspiracies. And that for me was a huge point, because to note, because women have women's intuition. It's no lie. They tend to they tend to gravitate towards things that have a positive aspect to them, and they find this. It's like, oh yeah, it's got this. Especially when you get that part where you're not alone, and that yes, we were created, and yes, it grounds you to the system, and that this world is very unique and made for us, and all that spirituality side. So I've dealt with a lot of emails from women and phone calls from women who I shouldn't use the line too much. It's from it's a sales pitch line, which is there's a reason why the hardcore, like the guys that sell penny stocks and junk bonds and crap, they're told only to pitch men, because women don't, they will smell BS quicker. The line is, don't pitch the bitch, but that's true. Is you don't. The women, they'll look at you cross-eyed and say, okay, what's going on here? And women have gone through this system, and the meetup I did in Seattle, it had to have been, I don't know, at least a third women that were there, and that's amazing for the conspiracy world. Conspiracy world is generally 85% men, and this one's tracking different. It's got a really cool message of hope to it, which is
that was a meetup in Seattle, you said, where it was 1/3 women.
Yeah. In fact, I could probably even, as soon as I'm done with you, I will send you the picture of it. And
cool.
Go ahead.
Oh yeah. Before I forget, how do you like in an area like this, where obviously people are not always willing to come forward and announce their stick a flag in the ground publicly. How do you measure growth? Because what are the ways in which you determine how many people this is reaching and that sort of thing? Is it like YouTube hits? Is it
YouTube hits and some Google references? Meaning, again, when you go into, one of the big ones was, again, the search engine, where if you type in "the Earth is," it should never, flat should never be the top of the list, but it is. And that was just a side effect. That isn't a tangible number, but you can imagine. I mean, there's companies all over the place that use massive internet marketing firms to put their name at the top of the list. It's like, the best chip in the world is, and there's millions of dollars is spent. That we were put to the top of the list on something generic as just as a side effect, but the rest has been internet metrics and YouTube hits and YouTube search results. Not just the hits, but the search results. And I know, when you type in, of course, there's not 18.9 million videos on separate videos. There's a lot of mirrors that are out there, but it's YouTube's math. One of the things I looked up was actually, I check on a regular basis, is there was a series. So I did the clues, but before my channel was even advanced enough to lump them all up into one, several people took them, because I made my stuff Creative Commons license, so you could take it and use it and do it.
Okay. So people, tell me, do you have like a I'm just trying to figure out a way to like kind of quantify it. So can you tell me like the number of people that were watching your early YouTube videos?
Versus Type in here.
How many are watching now?
My channel's got a whole bunch of millions of hits spread over a whole bunch of videos. But if you wanted to see something interesting, look at these two. because these are literally my videos compiled. There's one 2-hour video, and one's got, I think, 2.7 million. The other's got 3.5 million.
Okay.
And they're hitting completely different demographics. One was hitting the religious side. One was hitting, I don't know, something else. And
gotcha.
Those, so are there millions of people out there? Yeah, you bet. Because remember, even if it's just 1% of the population, it's 1% of the population in the United States alone, that's 3 million people. So there are a lot of people that are watching this stuff.
Tell me like so like when you're making say the first 2 or 3 months you're doing this, you start making videos, like what would be like after a week, what would be like the viewership total versus like now if you
back in the beginning it wasn't
like that
it wasn't that much because
right. But can you quantify, like do you know like roughly like estimates on like how many people then in let's say the first 2 months you were doing it versus now?
Not really, because I wasn't watching. I wasn't watching the hits. I was watching. I was really kind of. I was taking. Remember, I put it out there. I didn't. Let me take it back a different way. Not only I was so nervous when I put this thing out there that I didn't even turn on comments for the first 6 months, and I didn't. I didn't even monetize the channel for the first 15 months. So, but then
now it's monetized.
Oh yeah, now it's monetized. Well, I mean, YouTube actually sent me a letter and said you might want to think about monetizing. It's like okay. It's like, because I mean, other people they try to sponsor you. You try to be part of a network.
Yeah.
And I was ignoring it, and then finally YouTube sent me a thing themselves. They're like, look, you might want to do this. And
right. How much did you make? Do you make pretty good money from it?
I'm not going to tell you how much, but I make enough that it's worthwhile. The key is of course with me, I didn't really care about using copyrighted material because you can use copyrighted material in a lot of cases on YouTube. You just don't get the money for it. So a lot of my videos, I liked using little sound. I loved using other people's music, soundtrack music. But when I started doing my original stuff, that's when as long as you're not using copyrighted material, they'll pay you for it. And I gave away, oh my God, I gave away thousands of dollars. Because they pay you, like for example, they pay, I think nowadays it's changed, but I think it's like $1 every 1,000 hits. And so like for example, like the video I sent you, like 3.5 million hits. That's what, 3.5 grand right there just on one video that guy got, if he monetized it. So anybody that was taking my videos, they were making money off of it, which is fine. I didn't really care because that's not what I was in it for. It's like, the truth should be free, right? But after a while, it's like, okay, well, I'm going to do this full time, so I might as well make it pay. And that's what And you do
it full time now.
Oh yeah. I get royalties from the videos. I get royalties from the book, which I didn't even write. A London publisher called me up and said, "Hey, we'd like to turn."
What's the book called?
Flat Earth Clues. Okay. And they said, "We'd like to turn your book into, or your clues into a book." And I said, "Okay, what do I have to do?" And take it with a grain of salt. It's like this, nothing's going to happen. And they said, "Oh, just send us the transcripts." Because I narrated everything and I wrote it down. I go, "Send us transcripts, and we'll send you a Q&A and we'll answer a few questions." And sure enough, a few months later, it's on Amazon. It's like, hey, great, fantastic. And then a small radio network contacted me and they said, "Hey, how would you like your own radio show? You can talk about flat Earth." And I go, "Okay, never really done that before, but sure, why not?" And that was I think today's Thursday. Tuesday was my 119th show, and it's weekly.
Tuesday was your 119th show. Okay, wow.
Yeah, 119th show.
So over 100, well over 100 now. Okay.
Oh yeah, well over 100, and that's that's 2 years worth. And
so you do so just run me through real quick. So what you do? So you do YouTube videos.
YouTube videos.
A book you've done. And you do the radio show regularly.
And then podcasts and guest appearances wherever I can.
Oh wow. Okay.
So like I'm going to be one of the keynote speakers for the national conference in the fall, and then I was invited to the.
Is that the one? Where's that one? Where's that one located?
Raleigh.
Okay, that's right. Okay.
And then I'm doing the London one, which is coming up in the spring, and they're flying me over.
So they'll pay you to come. Are they paying you to come out?
They are not going to.
Or are they covering your?
They're covering
travel?
everything. Yeah.
Okay.
So so it's turned into a real thing, and
and what did you do before? Did I ever do a video? video game?
I initially started out. I played video games for a living back in the day. That's how I got into the industry.
Okay, yeah.
And then I know, of all things, back when nobody was playing video games for a living, I was a ringer that would actually go around like Macworld and E3. Seriously, it was. In fact, that was the first time I was ever in Boston. Was at Macworld back in the 90s.
And so what did you do? What did you do, or what was your title back then?
Oh, officially, I was a video game producer. So So what I did was I would seek out the talent to make video games. So the developers and the music guys and the graphic guys and all those. But when I was outside of the office, I was a ringer. So I would go to these conferences and I would make the games look better than play them to basically, because we didn't have screen recording at the time. We play the games as well as I could and talk to people and kind of show. It's like when you hire a professional archer to go to like a sporting goods show. And it's like, oh yeah, it's easy bullseye, that sort of crap.
This is super random, but maybe and has nothing to do with the story. But I was actually thinking about a story the other day about and maybe you'd be the perfect person to ask about whether this would work. It's kind of like and I don't know if this is true or not. I haven't done a single even a Google search on to see if this is a thing or not. But it seems like we're talking to some guys the other day, guys in their 30s who still play video games pretty regularly, almost kind of like a therapeutic thing. I didn't know if that would I was just figuring I'd get your take on whether that is a thing. Like, do you think it serves some of that purpose? It's just like kind of like that one time for even like grown men to kind of like either.
Well, if you're, it's a little different for me because I'm extremely biased. I'm a lifelong gamer, but it is therapeutic for a lot of guys. I mean, but it's also a slippery slope because especially with console games, if you're playing on your television at home, you're sitting on your couch with a whole bunch of chips and it tends like, okay, how much time are we going to burn doing this? Because it can be addictive, and for addictive personalities, it can get a little, it's tough, but at the same time, I can't really condemn it, but I can understand where people get, the relationships can get in trouble if you're doing that too much. But no, I mean, I hung out with huge gamers, and of course, a lot of them as they grew older, got married off and stuff.
Gotcha.
But,
Okay, gotcha. The only other thing I was going to ask is there a certain type of person, in your opinion, that's kind of predisposed to being attracted to the flat Earth theory?
Usually people that are open-minded. Well, actually, it's both sides because it's polarizing. It really depends how you get pulled in. Because if you're open-minded, you're going to get pulled in. But if you're also a big cynic, you might get pulled in on the other side, which is I'm gonna go in and condemn it. But generally, the people that are most into it, they've got to have some background in conspiracies. It's rare. It's rare that I run into people. It's like, I never looked at any conspiracies in my life ever, and then I looked into flat Earth. Usually, they have to be suspicious about something. Although nowadays, it's not that hard to you're gonna. It's like if you watched any movies, you're gonna be suspicious about something. But that's usually how it starts.
Gotcha. Okay. Okay, perfect. I'm just trying to think. And how old are you?
49.
49. And where are you based? Are you in? I couldn't tell if are you Seattle or Denver?
I'm in Seattle. I was in Colorado for 20 years, and that's where I came up with the clues. And then, but all my family's in Seattle, and I'm here until they send me. I had a producer call me. I said, "Look, that was one of the reasons I left." They said, "Look, you're gonna have to move." I go, "What are you talking about?" And they go, "You're gonna have to relocate. Whether or not this deal crashes or another deal crashes." Sooner or later, you're going to have a producer ask you to just go somewhere and shoot on site. And it's like, okay, well, that's what we'll do.
Okay, this has been awesome. The only other thing I was going to ask you is, were you saying earlier that like, obviously in a joking manner, but like, flat Earth is so polarizing or so untouchable that, or jokingly saying that, were you saying something like that even Alex Jones?
Even Alex Jones,
won't touch it.
Won't touch it. Yeah, it's so potentially it scares people from because it's polarizing. You don't don't know if you've got. In fact, you could plot it on a graph. The more subscribers you have and the more listeners you have, the more fear there is, because you don't know how they're going to react, and you've got to get over that. Whoever, I mean, everyone's got over it, has moved past it, has not regretted it, because you are going to lose some subscribers. There's going to people be right away. It's like, I am not going to listen to you ever again. But you're also getting this wave of people, this new people. It's like, all right, he's on board. And by the way, I just sent you a couple pictures, one from the Seattle meetup and then one from me down at the cool. One of the flat Earth billboards that was down at the Eclipse for the blackout zone. But yeah, Alex Jones, even he wouldn't commit to it, and I get it, but there's certain people, when you get to a certain size of conspiracy listeners, and there's three guys in particular. One is George Norrie, may not have heard of him. One is Joe Rogan, and one is Alex Jones. But it's weird because all three of those guys, it's weird. They believe they'll talk about all sorts of conspiracies, but they all toe the same line when it comes to this, and they say, "Oh yeah, NASA is absolutely 100% legit. We're not going to touch them." In fact, George Norrie told me that it was like an early interview I did, where he told me that on the air, and that was his warning to me, which was, just so you know, you can talk about flat Earth, but do not go down that road, because if you want to stay on the air, that's what we're going to do. And it's like, all right, that's fine. I don't need them, but
so even those guys, so Joe Rogan and Alex Jones, they don't talk about, they're not flat Earth. They don't talk about
in fact, Joe,
talk about it.
But Joe is interesting because Joe is the only conspiracy guy in the world that actually supposedly climbed out of the rabbit hole entirely to where he doesn't believe in conspiracies at all. Which is strange, because he used to be anti-NASA. He's a weird warning sign on the post of conspiracy path. Which is, he used to slam NASA, and then all of a sudden he goes dark for a while, and when he comes back, he's got a 1-year contract with the Sci-Fi Network where he's got this brand new show called Joe Rogan Questions Everything, and literally in the first episode he recanted everything he ever said bad about NASA. It's like, well, how did that happen? But I think he's secretly a closet flat earther, because he's done countless shows since we've come out, and maybe it could be for ratings, but where he comes out against us, because he knows the Twitter feeds are just going to explode and Facebook's going to explode every time he says it. It's like, oh, flat earthers, a bunch of idiots, and he'll just make up different ways of saying that. And they, with knee-jerk reaction from our community, we just come at him with everything we got. But yeah, he won't touch it either.
Okay. And then what year was it exactly that you got into this? The first time?
First time I even looked into it was summer of 2014. The first video was made in the beginning of 2015.
Hold on just a second. First time looked into it was
summer of 2014, yeah.
2014. Made first video in
2015.
2015. Do you remember what season it would have been in 2015?
Oh, yeah. I can tell you exactly. It was February 10th. I woke up in the middle of the night and had that Jerry Maguire moment where I woke up and said, I got it. I know how I can resolve this. And I sat down at the computer and cranked out the whole thing like I was possessed.
Yeah. And that's when you made a video? Your first video?
That was the first video I made, and then I made one. I made a clue every day. I did 7 clues in 8 days.
Okay. Okay, awesome. Well, Mark, this has been awesome. I appreciate you taking the time to chat.
No, my pleasure.
If I have any other questions that pop up, is it okay to either shoot you a quick email or give you a quick call?
Yeah. If I will be in the next 3 hours. I'm heading down to that meetup, but I'll have my cell phone with me.